Hello and welcome to the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. We bring you interviews from people who have conquered the trickiest of health challenges using the functional diagnostic nutrition philosophy and similar healing modalities. You're going to hear from experts who have been through the ringer with their health issues and yet managed to come out on the other side. You can always visit us at functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com, but for now, here is today's episode. All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 391 of the Health Detective Podcast. I'm excited for this, and this would not seem like a topic that a 29-year-old male would care about too much, but I do think these types of things are the future for a variety of reasons. And if you're like, what the heck's he talking about? Just wait for the episode because you will definitely understand as we get moving here. If you're wondering why my background is still the wonderful city of Miami, it's because we'd love to see you there on Friday, February 28th and Saturday, March 1st of 2025. We are doing the closest thing to an East Coast functional diagnostic nutrition conference we have ever done. So what we did is we teamed up with Sandy Martin of the Biohacker Expo, and we became the main stage sponsor. We said, how many FDNs can you hold? And she's like, as many as you can bring. So as of right now, we are expecting a little over 100 FDNs to be there, including some staff members as well. So you'll have Reed Davis, myself, Elizabeth Gaines, our education director, and more. Elizabeth will be speaking on the main stage. Reed and I will be doing a 90-minute business workshop. So whether you're an established FDN, trainee, or considering something like this, we'd love to have you there. You can use code HDP, like Health Detective Podcast, at biohackerexpo.com. That's biohackerexpo.com with code HDP for 50% off all tickets. Sandy was very generous with that. She said, if you're going to bring a bunch of people, we'll give you the best discount possible on tickets. It's getting cool too, because I've referred a lot of people to FDN over the years. So sometimes I almost forget who's in the course or who's working on current stuff. And so my Aunt Michelle, who's actually a meteorologist in our area up in Pennsylvania, she is actually considering coming because she's a trainee right now. So I thought that is so cool that my aunt might be coming to an FDN conference. And you guys always make me feel special. So now my family will think I actually do something that's actual work. They never really understand what I'm doing and how I'm traveling all the time. So you guys make me seem cool. I appreciate that. All right, let's get to today's topic here. This is going to be, again, a fun one. Dr. Amy Divaraniya is the CEO and founder of Oova, a leading women's health platform known for its physician-backed fertility and perimenopause at-home, very cool, hormone monitoring. Oova, which she founded after her own experience with infertility, empowers people to take control of their hormone health from their first period and to their last and beyond. Since founding Oova, Dr. Divaraniya has led groundbreaking research in the field of hormone health, leveraging her background as a data scientist. Welcome to the show, my friend. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you. And this is very relevant for a 29-year-old male.
Yes, yes, especially who has a 29-year-old wife, right? And we would prefer a couple more years of maybe just us and the dog. Let's put it that way. So this is very relevant. I want to get into, if I can, to the degree that you want, because I know infertility is obviously always it's a deeply personal thing that people are experiencing or dealing with. So to the degree that you want to do this, I'd like to ask about kind of your own health journey first before we get into the technology, especially since I think it will organically lead to that. So when did you first realize that something was going on, I guess, yeah, either with yourself or your partner in terms of infertility? And did you even have any inclination or expectation that that would be something that you guys would be having an issue with?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm happy to share this because I think it's important for families to talk about their journeys to make this conversation a bit more normalized, so we're not kind of stigmatizing ourselves. So for me, I'm South Asian, right? So for those who couldn't tell, I'm a South Asian woman. And as you can imagine, the number one priority for my parents, even before I had a husband or a boyfriend or somebody serious, was when am I getting grandchildren? So when I had my first cycle, I've always struggled with irregular cycles. And like from my first period, it's never been regular. And so for my mom, the number one concern was, well, you're going to have trouble giving me a grandchild. So how do we get this thing fixed? So right after I got out of college, I went to an OB, and they just took one look at me and were like, you have PCOS. And how did I look? I had just graduated undergrad with the pre-med degree. So I'd been in the library for the past 3 months, eating garbage. I had some adult acne. I had some facial hair. Being South Asian, I didn't have time to get my eyebrows done, so it was a little bit hairy on the face. And I had gained a little bit of weight. And so just looking at me, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. And so, and I was put on medications like metformin and birth control pills to help kind of bring those symptoms down a bit. The problem was that while the symptoms might have been getting addressed, I also got a bunch of side effects of these medications. I became very anemic, was bleeding very heavily. I became depressed for somebody who's very happy-go-lucky and excited and energetic. All of a sudden, I didn't have the energy to get out of bed, and nothing was exciting me anymore. And my mom was like, "Something's wrong with you. We need to go to a new doctor." I kind of like dealt with this for several years. So I was on these meds for about 3 years. And in that time, I found myself to get my eyebrows done. I lost some weight, the acne cleared up, and I go to a new OB. And in my intake form, I said, I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And she didn't run, she had run a blood panel on me at that point. And just as she's walking in with her clipboard, she had just handwriting notes. Gives you a bit of an idea of how old I am. Definitely not 29, but she just looked up from her clipboard very quickly and was like, "You don't have PCOS. Get off these meds. Let's get you back onto a regular, like, clean routine." And I was like, "Wait, what?" 3 years of me being on these medications, dealing with these symptoms, and it was just very dismissive, saying that you don't have this. You've been doing the wrong thing for 3 years. So when it came time to try to have a baby, my husband and I agreed we weren't going to try anything invasive. We didn't really want a doctor to tell me when or how I could get pregnant. And if it didn't happen naturally, then it just wasn't in our cards. And we were both aligned on that, but really nothing could have prepared us for this devastating journey that we were kind of embarking on. It was a very dark period. I still suffered from irregular cycles. I didn't really have any data about what was going on with my body. And mind you, I was tracking my cycle every day. I was peeing on sticks every morning. I took my temperature every morning. I like used every fertility tracking app and didn't really learn anything new about my cycle outside of having an irregular one. And so that's really we were very fortunate. 18 months later, we ended up conceiving our beautiful son, who's now 6. But those 18 months were incredibly lonely and a very dark period of our lives.
Okay. I'm sorry that you guys went through that, but I love that you made the absolute best out of a not so favorable situation. I think that's one of the most common themes out of 391 episodes. One of the most common themes are these amazing people who come on and take the mess and make it their message and just do something amazing with it. And it's one thing to become an FDN practitioner or health coach. I'm all for that. Obviously, I'm an FDN myself, but to create a whole company and then the technology around it, I mean, that's really uh, flipping this upside down. So I want to jump right into differences here. And I know that we don't know each other that well, but this is quite a type of question that we always have on the show with different technologies or different labs. It's not to bash one or say one's great. It's just truly to identify differences. So if you asked me, when I think about cycle tracking, like what would come to my mind? Instantly, Natural Cycles is something that comes to my mind. I think that they've done a great job with their branding and marketing, especially towards 20 somethings. That's something that I know multiple women that are not even into functional medicine and holistic health, but I've known them since the high school years or whatever it might be, and they are people that even use these things despite not being into, again, functional medicine or anything outside of that. So did Oova, how does that compare to things like Natural Cycles? What are the differences there?
Yeah, so I mean, I can take one step back here where
Sure.
when we started the company, I really like I had lived this journey, right? Especially when you're talking about the fertility space. Um, there's there's a lot of gaps in the data sets that we're able to curate ourselves and we're trying to understand our bodies. And so when I was on my journey, I took a whiteboard and I wrote 5 things that I wanted this product to have. And if our company couldn't achieve these 5 things, then we weren't going to move forward with it. So I can just quickly list those for you.
Sure.
The first is that the test had to be personalized. So when you look at these like over-the-counter tests and a lot of these algorithms that are out there, they're kind of hard-coded for women who have a 28-day cycle and who follow these perfect textbook curves. But if you're someone like me who has a very irregular cycle, those algorithms just aren't going to work for you. So we needed to ensure that the entire platform was incredibly personalized for every unique user. The second was it had to be a quantitative test. So I didn't want a plus or minus. I didn't want a smiley face or a circle. I wanted an actual number, right? So we ensured we were doing that. The third piece was we wanted this to be non-invasive. So I didn't want to use a finger prick. I didn't want to use anything that was going to require me to like hurt myself in any way to get a result, something that could be as non-invasive as possible. The fourth pillar was that it had to be in real time. So I didn't want patients mailing samples to a lab or waiting days to get their results. It had to be done within minutes in the privacy of their home. And the last piece, which is actually the most critical, is I wanted a clinician to be able to trust these results. So if a patient is using Oova and they walk into a clinician's office, the doctor doesn't just dismiss those results. They actually take those results and say, okay, what are we going to do next based on this data that you've given me? So we try to stay true to all five of those pillars with every single feature development or everything that we do to grow this product. Now, going back to your original problem or question, how we differ from a company like Natural Cycles is one thing we've really honed in on is hormonal health isn't limited to just fertility. When you think of women's health, a lot of times everyone's attention goes to, okay, you must have a baby, and that's what women's health is.
Sure.
We're actually much more than that. And trying to get pregnant is probably the shortest phase of any woman's life. There's a lot that happens before and after that we don't even really understand. And a really good example is menopause. 100% of women that live to a certain age will go through this transition. And yet we know such little about that transition. And it all stems from a hormonal imbalance. So if we can understand what our hormones are saying and doing, now, oh my gosh, you've just unlocked this massive wealth of data and information that we can actually action on. So that's how we're focusing on this. How do we bring hormonal health to the forefront and help women navigate every life transition?
I think that's brilliant. So it's kind of like, um, I mean, to be fair, it's almost like you get anything that you could get with something like a Natural Cycles, except significantly more. Is that fair to say?
That's one way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, see, you're too humble, you're too nice, but you're like, yeah. For those on audio listening afterwards, she's got that smile. She's like, "Yep, that's what we came up with." And I think that's an amazing part about today's world. I mean, on one end, sometimes the technologies. I'm speaking in general now. It gets a little scary that I'll maybe never meet you in person, and yet we can have this full conversation thousands of miles away or however far away it is. That can get a little nutty, but the advancements and what we're able to understand about ourselves, and the fact that you can do this at home, is just awesome. So you did mention non-invasive. So I'm just going by the way where my mind would go as a consumer if I'm listening to this on again video, or I'm watching this on video or listening to this on audio. I'm thinking, okay, non-invasive next. Like, so how do you actually track with this? Because I'm guessing that the temperature thing would be nowhere near enough to get the hormone levels. So what do you actually use to figure out the levels here?
Yeah, sure. So there, it's all done through urine. So if you order one of our kits, it comes with 30 test strips, 15 that measure luteinizing hormone and progesterone, and 15 that measure estrogen. Now we're looking at urinary metabolites of all three of these hormones, but we've done a lot of work to ensure that the correlation between our results and serum or blood is as high as possible. And so the way that the test strips look, I'll describe it for those on audio, but for video, it looks like this. So it looks very similar to a pregnancy test, and basically a woman would provide a urine sample on the sample pad. There's a QR code and then a window that shows you lines. Depending on how many hormones are being tested, they'll show you the appropriate lines. And so you wait 10 minutes after you provide the sample. You then scan this using the camera on your phone. There's no attachment, there's no device. It's all based off of these amazing cameras that we're holding in our hand constantly. And we do all the interpretation in real time. So we'll interpret the intensity of the line and give you a quantitative result within seconds.
That's so
And the
cool.
idea, right, you would use this over the course of 15 to 30 days, depending on what your health goal is. And the app actually navigates you to understand which hormone to test on which day, what the results mean. And then we also seamlessly share that data with your clinician if you're working with one.
Okay. And Sarah already asked in the chat, what is the company name? So it's called Oova, and you can get it at www.oova.life. I just put that in the chat for you. And then, of course, we'll shout it out more directly at the end, Sarah. I don't want to overly focus on the fertility side. I promise I'll move on from that. I'm just going there because, again, that's kind of the comparison I think of. That's what
Yeah.
I've seen on the market before. And I know that for many, many of our FDN practitioners that would listen to something like this, they're already using something like Natural Cycles. And so for them to understand everything that they could get with that, anything else is just a benefit or bonus. So one thing I want to ask, because I'm aware of the data behind the thermometer or temperature testing, I should say, for fertility. It actually is something that the FDA recognizes, for whatever that's worth to our listeners. But it does matter for something like that, right? They don't want people randomly getting pregnant or not being able to get pregnant if they think that they should be. And so it is fairly accurate. It's kind of interesting how if you do it over time, it does work very well. Where does urine testing for fertility compare in terms of like the accuracy that can be found with consistent temperature readings? I've always kind of wondered about that because it's like you have to be very specific about things. My wife has done the natural methods for a while, and it's like, well, if she gets up too fast or if she forgets after 6-7 minutes, it's kind of a pain. And then of course we're talking about something serious here, especially if you're trying not to conceive at a given time. You don't really want to be making these errors. So how accurate is urine testing for figuring out where someone might be in their cycle or if they're fertile or not fertile, compared to something like the temperature testing?
Well, the best thing to say is that the temperature it is great. Like it's a great symptom to use to kind of track where you are in your cycle. However, it is a symptom and it's a result of how your hormones are behaving. You're going to see a slight temperature rise that happens as your progesterone rises post ovulation, right? And that's to tell you that, okay, you've ovulated. So we've talked to so many clinicians, so many of them do trust the BBT method, and it's great. But the problem is it's very clear in the retrospect. In real time, it's kind of difficult for the exact reasons you just stated. If I get out of bed, or if I move a little bit, or if I don't take my temperature that moment, that same minute, same hour every day, it does impact your results. And for me, like I did do the BBT testing, and it becomes kind of a manic driving step that you have to take throughout the day, especially when you're on this journey. And I joke with my team quite often that there was one time I was traveling because I traveled a lot during the end of my PhD. I forgot my underwear, but I remembered that thermometer because God forbid I forgot that thermometer and I would be able to monitor for 2 days. It's really that crazy. And so I think with what we provide with Uva, with the hormonal testing, you're actually getting to the root of the cause, right? You're not dealing with the body temperature. Yes, of course you can layer that in. It's a great piece of information to layer on top of your hormones to understand your cycle. But when you're looking at hormonal patterns, that's the underlying cause of every symptom that you're experiencing.
Okay, and I'm sorry because I have this bad tendency, I swear it's just because I'm interested, to list off a bunch of other things and then ask a question or ask like 3 questions in one. So to go back to one of the questions was, how does the accuracy compare though? I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that they say it's something along the lines of if you were to do like natural cycles, their thermometer stuff perfectly is the key word. You're still only at about 96, 97%, which sounds great, but it's like, okay, well, if you have sex more than 100 times, right? Like things could happen.
Right.
So where does the urine stuff compare to that? Is it 90%? Is it 99, 85? Where would that fall?
I mean, so what we do all of our testing on, and keep in mind that we have not tested this or validated this test for contraceptive use. That would be an off-label use for our product. But what we do all of our testing on is to confirm that our measurements that we provide through the urine are correlated with serum and the hormone concentrations in blood. And so we get to a 99% correlation for the hormones that we're measuring today.
Okay, so it's off-label use. So let me word my next question very correctly. Not medical advice, just your personal opinion. If you were a consumer of your own product, would you trust this method, Uva's method, for contraception more than something like natural cycles? Again, just your opinion. You're not making a medical claim at all.
I mean, I would, being a researcher, I would say that
Mhm.
the study has not been done to say that this can be used as a contraceptive.
Okay,
However, we're very good at telling you when your most fertile window is. Now you do with
perfect.
that information as you'd like.
I like talking to you already. I love this data scientist mind. No, because I appreciate your objectivity because it's very, we have amazing people on this podcast. I'm not even saying that we've had anyone like this per se, but it's very easy to get on here and just overly push something and not be objective and just act like your thing's the best at everything in the world. Um, and so this seems like it's a very strong competitor, and as we get more data, maybe it will even be superior. But again, you guys do other stuff. It's not just about a contraceptive type thing. So now let's go into the bigger side of this, which is the hormone monitoring. As FDNs, one of the things that we always recommend, if you're starting off with our program, is we do salivary hormone testing. It's one of our foundational labs. And then as people evolve in their FDN journeys, I mean, we want to know our hormones all the time. We want to know different labs all the time. If we all had the funds, I swear to God, half of us would wake up every single day and test every day, just so that we are always a step ahead of things. So what are some, I guess, long-term benefits of people that are doing something like this regularly? I mean, what type of insights can they get that maybe you would only or not be able to get unless you were using like salivary hormone testing frequently or blood testing frequently? Because those things are well, salivary hormones testing is not invasive, but they're a pain in the butt. They're impractical. They're very expensive to do every single day. I've never met a person who's done that. So what are some insights that you can get doing this regularly that would just not be practical or even possible financially with salivary hormone testing or blood testing?
Yeah, I think the key thing is the hormones that are being monitored, right? So the three that Uva is currently focused on, they're very dynamic. They fluctuate on a daily basis. I mean, it's called a menstrual cycle for a reason because there's a cyclical pattern to these hormones. And so the real value of monitoring with Uva is being able to see how that pattern is evolving time over time. So we're not like if you were to look at my data and another woman's data, our cycles may be completely different and our hormone trends might be completely different. The main like the flagpole moments will be the same. Like, yes, we'll ovulate. Yes, we'll confirm an egg is released. Yes, we'll menstruate. But the length of time for each of those moments is going to be different. The peaks and valleys that we see are going to be very different. And then on top of that, when you look at like my data from cycle 1 to cycle 2 to cycle 3 to cycle 4, there's variations that happen there too. So there's a lot you can learn by just monitoring your cycle over time, right? And understanding that we're living, breathing creatures that has a lot of movement in this data that you're to capture every day. Now, what can you do with it? It really depends on what question you're asking. So in your case, where you said that you wanted to wait a couple of years before you decided to grow your family, this would be really valuable for you to have, for your wife to have this information to see, am I going to have trouble getting pregnant? How regular is my cycle? Do I ovulate correctly? Am I releasing an egg every cycle or not? Those are really critical questions that can be answered by just 1 or 2 months of monitoring before you even go down that fertility path. Because I think one of the biggest gap or problems is that women assume if you have sex, you're going to get pregnant. That's what we're taught. We're taught that from a very young age. And then when you are ready for this and it doesn't happen, you're kind of left to figure out why and what's wrong with you that this isn't happening for you. And that may not be the case at all. It just might be that you need to learn your cycle. You are not a typical 28-day textbook curve, and there's a lot of variation that happens in each of our bodies. So that's one key thing. The other big piece is really understanding what's happening during various transitions. Again, living, breathing creatures that experience certain symptoms when our hormones are behaving in a certain way. Why can't we put data behind some of those things that we experience to really understand why we're having that? PMS is a huge thing. A lot of women experience debilitating PMS symptoms, and there's a hormonal reason for it. Can we understand what that is? If you're suffering from reoccurring miscarriages, is there a reason for that? Is it that your progesterone is not staying elevated in a stable fashion post ovulation? There's intervention that can be taken if you have that data, but you can't capture that by getting a single blood draw or like checking your saliva every once or twice in a cycle.
Sure. Awesome. Okay. So I think that's where that answer just clicked a bunch of stuff for me. And I'm really understanding the difference in terms of what you guys are doing and not doing. And I should have said this off air to you, but I'll say it publicly. So I hope people know this. And I haven't said it publicly in a while. It depends on the guest and the brand, right? But I tried to go into the interview with a healthy amount of ignorance because I want to think the same as the person that's listening right now. I want to ask the same questions and be like, well, wait, what about this? Or what about this? So that just clicked something for me that I'm like, oh, now I understand fully what your target audience is and what you're trying to really achieve here. And especially how this is wildly different than something like a natural cycles, because yeah, that's not going to give you, at least from what I know, any of this data at all. They're not even focused on that, right? It really is just purely around the contraceptive side. And, you know, again, you're still taking somewhat of a risk with that. That's for sure. I guess you're always taking a risk with any of these things. Okay. So then if someone was already undergoing infertility treatment, can this help along during that treatment to help make it more effective? It sounds like that would be an easy yes.
Yeah, nothing's ever an easy yes in science, right?
Or choice of words.
So um, we can support everything up until an IVF cycle, and the only reason we can't support IVF cycles is because the medications that patients are put on just rises their hormone levels much higher than what Uva's test can measure. So we wouldn't want to falsely promote that we can support IVF. That's absolutely not the case. But anything leading up to IVF, we can support. And so we've been working with a lot of the leading fertility centers to actually get case studies going, showing that Oova is working or supporting a lot of these other use cases. And the beauty is it actually removes a lot of the need for patients to have to come in for excessive monitoring. They can do it all at home.
Okay. We have a large audience, but a good portion of our audience is practitioners and future practitioners. We have a lot of FDNs that niche, if you will, around infertility. So many of them have had a similar experience, and there's nothing that they love more than helping people kind of uncover what's going on there. So, from the practitioner, or I should say, business owner standpoint, how would you? Like, let's say I'm an FDN, right, that focuses on infertility. How would you work with me to help me get this involved with all of my clients? Are there certain affiliate things I can set up with you, or how would that look and work?
Yeah, we work with clients in all different ways because everyone has kind of a unique setup.
Mhm.
So the number one thing is if you're a provider and you want to work with us, we can add you to our clinician portal where you become searchable in our app, and patients can add you automatically. One thing to keep in mind is Uva's entire system is fully HIPAA compliant. So who controls the data at the end of the day? It's the patient.
Mhm.
So the patient has to opt into who they want to and they do not want to share their data with. So as a provider, you can reach out to our team. We can get you onboarded into our platform. If a patient adds you as one of their providers, you'll be able to view their data in our HIPAA compliant online portal. And so the moment the woman scans her UVA test at home, she'll get the results in her app, but the doctor will be able to view it in their UVA portal as well.
That's so cool. All right, we're almost about 30 minutes in, and you guys know at that time I always love to bring in your questions if you have any. So please, for the next 25 minutes or so, feel free to drop any in the chat, and I will happily prioritize them. Obviously, make them relevant about this topic. That would be great. The next thing I'm already wondering is, okay, tons of women on birth control, tons of women on IUDs, hormonal IUDs. All of those things can affect hormones. How does this work if someone is on birth control or an IUD? Does it matter? Can you not use it? So I know there's a few things here, but you get what I'm getting at.
Yeah. So if you're on a hormonal birth control of any kind, you have to be sure, like the results aren't really going to be meaningful for you
Okay.
because the birth control is doing its job. It is overriding your cycle. It's not letting you really experience a natural cycle. So your hormones are not going to be cycling the way that they would had you not been on birth control. But birth control is working. So if you're on one, you should not be using UVA testing. But if you're on a non-hormonal birth control and you are still cycling, even if you're not having a period, UVA can still be really helpful for you.
Okay. Awesome. And I think that kind of helps promote something that we'd like to promote. We're not telling anyone what to do. Again, this is certainly not medical advice, but I think it is disgusting personally how we just throw these 13, 14, 15-year-old girls on these kind of serious pills because it's like, hey, you have a couple pimples, you don't want that, right? You have prom coming up, so yeah, just take this for the next 10, 15 years. And it's like, I think it's manipulative and I think it's scary. I'm not against the doctors. 99% of those people are just people doing their jobs. Totally get that. But the system behind that and the army that pushes these types of pills on young women is crazy, especially as someone who has worked with many women in their 20s and see them come off of this thing. And then they're like, when I started this at 16, I had a cycle. Now that I got off at 20, 26, I don't have one. And I'm like, well, when did you get off? A year ago. I'm like, whoa, whoa. So I am someone that definitely believes if there's alternatives out there, that would be great. Is there any reason that, because I know that we're talking about fertility, we're talking about even menopause, but is there any reason that a young woman that has started cycling, like in a perfect world, couldn't start using this with their parents' help, of course, but would that be something that, a 14-year-old couldn't use?
Why not? Why not understand what your cycle is doing? I mean, it's you bringing up a really interesting point because I think we're the first generation to see what prolonged use of birth control actually does to our cycle. And you're like you said, 10 years. I mean, we know patients that have been like we are seeing patients that have been on birth control for well over 15,
Oh,
20
yeah.
years. And they're coming off of it trying to get pregnant. And it's like, well, you're gonna have to let your body kind of detox from the medication you've been on for so many years and let the cycle come back.
Mhm.
So it's a very unique thing that I think we're going to have to deal with and learn from in this generation. But there's nothing stopping a woman that's 14 years old from using our product just to understand what her hormones are doing, what's going on with her cycle, how regular it truly is.
Well, I think that's great. We have so many moms out there that listen, whether they're practitioners or not. We have a lot of moms that listen, and if you could have that conversation with your daughter and get her on board with something like this, I think that's amazing. Because what's really cool about all these trackers or a wearable like the Aura ring that I have on right now, I need a code for that if I'm going to shout it out. Is I just see these technologies getting better the more data points we have, and then I'm thinking about if someone was blessed enough to have a parent that was aware of these types of technologies and got them using something like this at 14, how much better off is that young person's life at 24 or 44 when they've had, 10 or 20 years of data, right? That's got to be better and
Exactly.
better as it goes along.
Exactly. And I think we're a really unique company where we actually utilize this data to help improve not only the product experience, but also the user experience, because with every piece of data we capture, your personal journey gets even more informed.
Mhm. Do you know Boris with Thea Health by any chance?
No, I do not.
Okay, so he does CGM stuff, and I remember him telling me we were at a conference called Hicks back in October for FDN, and he was just saying, he's like, if you understood how many data points all these CGMs and all this stuff's getting and where this is going, he's like, it's going to be crazy to see
Mhm.
both good and bad, depending on who has the information, what we can
Yeah.
do in, 5, 10 years from now. So we do have some audience questions. Thank you guys. We'll start with Tracy. How would this benefit menopausal women? Yeah, I know that's a huge part of your target audience or target market, if you will. And I don't even think I fully have asked questions to talk about that yet. So how would this benefit someone that is menopausal and maybe starting something like this for the first time?
Yeah, so we always wanted to build a platform that transcends all phases of a woman's life, and of course, perimenopause, menopause is one of them. But it might not have been the first place we went to had this not happened. So when we launched Oova, we started with the fertility use case, and we saw very quickly that 46% of our users were above the age of 35. And then when we started looking at like what their comorbidities were and what they were like saying they had, many of them were telling us that they were perimenopausal. But when you look at their data, they're still cycling. It's just irregular. And then when you dig down even deeper, they've always had an irregular cycle. So they were getting misdiagnosed with perimenopause just because of their age. And that I was like, okay, there has to be a myth here that we can bust. So let's try to collect data around this. And so we launched our perimenopause experience. And so now what we're seeing is that we have women coming in that are really addressing three types of questions. The first is, am I in perimenopause? So we can help address that by seeing like, are you cycling? Are you releasing eggs regularly? So on. The second is, I'm experiencing these symptoms. I go to my doctor. They tell me, I'm telling them I feel off, but a doctor can't really treat that. So what does this mean? And now what we're starting to do is actually layer in what these hormonal patterns are and how that goes back to why the symptom is actually occurring. And we're publishing constantly about this. So there's a lot of stuff that we put out there. You can go to our website and look at our research page to really see some of the new findings that we've been presenting over the past few months. And the third one is if a woman is on HRT, while this is not something that UVA would necessarily support, it's something you can work with your doctor like, together with or collaborate with them on. It's to make sure that the HRT is actually being used properly and you're getting the right dosage and your body's metabolizing things appropriately. So there's really a lot of things you can do. The beauty is with quantitative data, a clinician and a patient can really go to town with that and start to interpret it as they like.
Nice. All right, Garrett, welcome back, Garrett. I saw him the other day. Nice to have you here. He said, "Would an IUD have similar hormone balance implications?" I do. Maybe I got confusing because I mentioned birth control and the pill and IUD at the same time. But you did say that a hormonal IUD could kind of affect this in a way that you might not be able to use it, right?
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna get anything meaningful because it's you're gonna get the, results of what the IUD is actually doing. It's going to be masking the natural cycle, and you'll be able to see that the woman is actually handling the IUD properly or not, but you're not gonna get any meaningful data outside of, like, pretty much low levels depending on which type of IUD you're on.
Thank you, Garrett. And then looks like he just has a comment here, but I think this is worth sharing. I'm sure you agree. I agree on these test trackers for women, especially for those who are trying to conceive. It is all about hormone balance. I do think the excess microplastics in the environment and more is causing this. Well, I would have to say I agree. Definitely with the and more part as well. But when you consider the fact, I mean, I know this is like a reel that goes around, so it's almost cliche in our space at this point, but it is true. I mean, we're consuming about a credit card's worth of plastic each week, all of us. I mean, that's disgusting when you think about it. The fact that we can even survive doing that, right? Like, what happens if I eat a credit card right now, like a full one? I don't think that would go so well. So the fact that we're just expanding that over 7 days, well, I don't think it is going well for many of us. Which leads me to my next question, which was going to be around. So let's say we get results back here that are not optimal for that person. We know that, hey, this person maybe is trying to get pregnant, and we're seeing certain things with Oova that show, hey, this isn't going so well right now. Is the next step always to consult directly with a clinician? Do you guys give recommendations or help with that? Like, how does that work in terms of, all right, what do I do if something's wrong?
Yeah, so well, one of the big things is we wanna make sure that women are getting educated, right? Women just aren't taught about what their cycle is, what these hormones do, why they matter, and so on. And I'm sure if you fill up a room with a bunch of women, there's a fraction of them, a pretty heavy fraction of them that won't be able to tell you why they have a cycle, right? So one of our big pillars is how do we educate women about what all this data means. So that's one thing that should help with some of this isn't good data. Like, is it actually not good data, or is it just normal for you that doesn't match textbook curve? That's one piece. The second is we offer internal consultations. So if a woman wants to talk to our team about what her results mean or what to do next with it, we're happy to get on the phone with her and kind of walk her through what those results mean. And the third is she can work with the clinical team, but if she doesn't have one, we can do a referral for her. And I think that's also been really well, I guess, taken from our users, because these are trusted clinicians that know how to interpret the Oova data and know how to treat patients going through whatever they're going through. And at this point, we have over 300 clinicians that are partnered with us. So we can even say, okay, looks like you're telling us you have endometriosis. Here are 4 or 5 clinicians that specialize in fertility with endometriosis background.
Okay. Guys, if you're a graduate that's watching right now, let me know in the chat if you want this on Pro Series. I'm really Dr. Amy, I think you'd be great in our graduate group doing more formal presentation. They'd set you up with the guidelines for that, but instead of interview style, we'd actually have you come in, present the stuff to our grads. I know that there's so many that would love to implement something like this in their practice. And quite frankly, just being an FDN, you get a ton of people that are dealing with infertility, even if that's not what they came to you for. Like, they're coming for anxiety and depression, and then you find out, oh, I'm also dealing with this. And it's like, holy cow. So obviously we want to help with that if we can, but I think our grads would absolutely love you. If you guys do have any more questions from the chat, let me know. I wanted to ask you, because I saw this tab on your website, but I wanted to let you verbalize it, about success stories. So I'm sure success with this could actually look like multiple different things. So if you want to list off like one or even two's fine with me, 2 success stories, whatever that looks like, I'd love to hear about some cool testimonials or results that happened as a result of using this platform.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think one of my favorite things in what I do every day is like talking to our customers, because they're just some of the most wonderful, well, in this case, women that I've ever really had the chance to get to know. So you can imagine, I'll tell you one, this is like from like really early days. Like, I want to say like user number 4 in our platform. And we had just launched the product, and this woman came in, and you can imagine when you launch a product, like you're monitoring everything to make sure that things are going according to plan. And when she registered in our app, she said that her period was over a year ago. We asked when was the last day of your period, and she had entered something like over a year ago. So the algorithm kind of freaked out, like, we don't know what's going on. So I reached out to her and I was like, is this a typo, or is this for real? And she said, no, it's real. I got pregnant, had a baby, breastfeeding. My cycle hasn't come back yet, but I want to have my second baby soon, because she was in the military and needed to have her children within a certain time frame that was allocated to her. And I was like, okay, well, Uva doesn't really know where you are. So let's like do a baseline with cycle 1, cycle 2. We'll learn cycle 1, cycle 2 will be a little bit more accurate. So she's like, totally fine. Let's go at it. And so she starts using it, and she is cycling, even though she's breastfeeding and hasn't had her period return yet. And cycle 2, we got her pregnant. So it was a really powerful story for us, because we were like, oh my gosh, like we don't need to rely on some of these um, like stakes that you put into the ground when you're trying to understand a woman's cycle. We're really doing this off of hormonal data.
Nice.
That was a pretty powerful one for us.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was really excited about that one. I think another one, and this is outside the fertility space, if that's okay. When women are navigating perimenopause, they're often feeling very lost, feel like completely not like themselves and out of control. And then the worst step is that when you go to your clinician and you kind of share what's going on, they don't really know how to treat you, and you feel dismissed or gaslit, right? That's oftentimes what you hear from these women. So we had a woman that was using Oova just to help kind of track her perimenopause symptoms. And it was one of our early users. I was like, listen, like, we don't really know what's going on yet. Like, we're figuring this out. We're building the plane as we're flying it. Like, just bear with us. She's like, totally fine. I'm going to use this, and let's see what we find.
Mhm.
Well, a couple months later, she'd been using it diligently every day, like captured all this data, was tracking her symptoms. We get on a consult, and I'm looking at her data, and I was like, wow, like this is really interesting. And we get on the phone. Before I can even say anything, she's like, do you realize that when my estrogen plummets, I sleep horribly? Do you see that in your data? And I was like, yeah, we just published on this, and you're like a perfect use case showing that what we presented was actually true. She was able to, because she was very data driven as well, she was able to attribute a lot of her symptoms to her hormonal patterns. And what she said to me in that consult was, I feel so validated. No one has been able to answer my questions, but Uva has. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, okay, that's exactly what we're building this.
Okay, yeah, that's even more validity that this needs to be in the graduate group. That's exactly that conceptually that's what we do, right? Is show people these unique insights that they might not even think about, and then that's clinical correlation, as we'd call it. That's correlating it with a real symptom of the person. It's not a diagnosis, but it is clearly a correlation there, and it's a meaningful one. Wow, that's amazing. What do you see, if anything? What do you see in the future with your app? Will you guys track additional things? Because I know all these places that track something, whether it's a wearable or something like this, it seems like they always have some desire to add things on. I don't know if there's a law of diminishing returns and there's a point where it just doesn't make sense. But I'm curious, are you looking in the future to ever add additional markers or things like that?
Well, we're never going to just stay where we are. We're really growing. We're wanting to be a hormonal health platform. So that means we have to add additional biomarkers. And there's a lot in the pipeline. This is going to be a really fun year for us. So just stay tuned.
Okay, thank you. Garrett, very lively today. Thank you, sir. I so much believe that many doctors have no idea how to work with women, fertility, hormone balance, perimenopause, or menopause. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into that, but that's correct for that and many other things, right? And it's because why was Western medicine originally created? It was created a lot for emergency situations. Hey, a fraction of us are dying from this bacteria. Hey, we're getting into accidents. So you're right. It was equipped for these things that we really needed some help with. And we didn't fix all of those things, but we certainly did a dang good job. And now, we have these other issues. This is the point I wanted to get here, though. He said, I do also think men need to be on some type of 3-month preconception plan as well. So we don't have to talk about any specific plans, but I am kind of curious, how do men fall into this? Because if fertility is something that you're looking into, obviously we do eventually have to talk about the male. So is there something that you guys are going to offer with that? Or is there just a general recommendation that you would give to these females partners to make sure they're looking at their stuff at the same time that the women are looking at theirs?
Yeah, so for men, I mean, it's really their sperm count and motility and things like that. It's not really biomarker specific at that for that. So we're not going to develop a sperm test, but there's so many companies out there that do it well. So we're always open to a partnership. We're still kind of scoping out who we'd like to partner with and kind of um, ink that deal. But when it comes to biomarkers, there's a lot that we're looking at, and we've had a ton of men that have been asking to use our estrogen test because they feel like their estrogen is elevated, and it's been really informative. So I'm excited for what's coming this year.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and no worries. I actually couldn't even have told you offhand, admittedly, like what would have been. I wouldn't even know exactly what the best things to test are for male fertility. So yeah, if that's kind of already been, I won't say done, but if we already know what the things to look at are, and there's places offering it, at least now we know. I just always want to make sure people do check both individuals. Um,
Of course.
I think there is. I'm careful with this because I think victim mentalities in a lot of ways are overutilized in today's world. All groups are trying to be victims for whatever reason. However, I think there's also real biases and real stigmas. And I do think a real stigma is the idea that if a couple is infertile, instantly all of us, sometimes even including the women, think about the woman. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think it takes two to tango, right? That's why there's two human beings involved in making this baby. And both parties need to be looked at. And one person is not less than or better than for being fertile. While we are all subject to the craziness of this world, no one's at fault if they are unable to do this stuff, but we do need to get the data and figure out how to get them as healthy as possible so that they can do these things. So, where can people find your stuff? And do you guys do anything outside of the website? Like, where can they get more information? Just, I want to know the best places that they can go to learn more about you.
Yeah, so it depends on who you are. If you're a patient that's interested in Uva, then you can go to our website, uva.life, and get yourself a kit. There's a lot of information about what the product's measuring, all of our research behind it, and so on. If you're a provider that's interested in working with us, you can go to the same website, and there's a For Providers page. You can fill out our form, and our team will reach out to you within 24 hours. But we're always looking for new partners. We're always looking for ways to help grow others' practices and incorporate our technology in there too.
Thank you. And then in terms of pricing subscriptions, I'm sure it would look a little different for the consumer versus the clinician. So humor me and let's go with the consumer side, I guess, for this one. So is it a monthly thing? Do I do a year-long contract? Like, I'm not it doesn't matter either way. I'm just wondering, how would this work
Yeah,
for
sure.
the customer?
It's very like friendly. So you could do a one time, which is 159, or you could do a subscription, which is 129 a month. You get all the testing that you need. The app is free. You get free interaction with your clinicians. We take care of all of that for you, and then our support team is available to you as needed.
What do you mean one time 159 or monthly for 129?
So if you want to just purchase a kit, just like for a 1 month of testing and not do a
Oh,
subscription, it's 159. But if you want to do a subscription, then you get $30 savings each month, and it's 129.
got it. I apologize. So, okay, I mean, in a perfect world, though, I shouldn't even say perfect world. I mean, it is more ideal than not to be doing this monthly, right? Like that's what you would
Yeah,
want everyone to do.
yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of value in the data.
No, I get that. I'm saying, but the fact that you even offer it as a standalone for a month shows that some people must be doing that. And so, would you say, I'm Sally, and I've never done this stuff. I'm 28, and maybe my budget's a little limited right now, so I get the 159 for one time. Is Sally still going to get like actually significant stuff that she can get a real benefit from just from 1 month of tracking? I kind of was under the assumption that I would need to do this more regularly, but are you saying even 1 month could provide significant insight?
Again, it goes back to what your question is, right? So if
Okay.
you're just interested in knowing your baseline, yeah, 1 month is sufficient for you. But what we've seen with our data is that it's really addicting. And women just love jumping into subscription right afterwards. So we do see a lot of conversion to subscription. But it's really, we try to design a platform that's really meets a customer where she is. So if she wants to do the one time, it's available. If she wants to do subscription, no strings attached, you can cancel anytime. You can do that as well.
Okay, I think that's totally fair. I think you're also right about the addicting nature. So we made a I won't call it a mistake. We made the choice to gift my mother the new Generation 4 Aura Ring for her
Oh,
birthday in
good.
October. And she was very happy about this, to the point that I am getting readiness and sleep scores every other day via text because she can't stop looking at it. But I'm super happy because, I mean, I know we're not talking about Aura Ring here, but that's an example of something that my mom is already, she's been doing this stuff for years. She did the functional medicine thing. She worked with Jem Maleka, all the stuff, and already got insights in only 2 months of using this thing, 3 months, whatever it's been, that has changed her habits. So that's why I see something like this and I'm like, man, if everyone just tried a CGM for a month, tried something like this for a month, or a ring, you're pretty committed, right? You're not going to give that back after a month. But like all these things, just a little bit of time can show you so many things that you need to work on. I did a CGM for 2 weeks. I was humbled by it. I eat pretty well. I was like, wow, no, my blood sugar is spiking much higher than I thought, and it's dipping much lower than I thought certain times, and I need to balance it. So I guess that's kind of an equivalent here, where I only used that for a short period of time, but I still got insight that was actually quite meaningful to me and did change the way I do things a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's really, again, goes back to what your question is and
Mhm.
what you want to do with that data.
Yes. All right. For the last couple minutes here, I just want to ask, this is just a fun question. What is something that you're most proud of that you guys have achieved so far with Oova? And it could be anything, right? It could be a specific marker because you seem like a fellow nerd, definitely, if I may say that.
Yeah, I
It
am.
could be something, less data driven, but still something you're just proud of. I'd love to know.
I think, well, okay, I'll say two things. I know you said one thing, but I'll say two.
Okay.
The first is I think we've built a platform that actually really empowers a woman. And that's always the dream, right? Like, how do I make a woman walk away more educated and more knowledgeable? But the fact that women are walking away more confident is one of the biggest prizes we could have done with this platform. The second thing is, I think what we've really accomplished is we figured out how to make a woman, her body, and her clinician finally have the same conversation. So we really opened up those doors. And I think that's really powerful because we're not trying to excise the doctor or the clinical team from our platform. They're really critical when it comes to any health journey. But it's important that everyone is talking the same language. And Uva has really opened up that line of communication.
Yeah, thank you. Because even in, and I mean that seriously, because even in the functional medicine space, it's like we try so hard here at FDN to make sure everything we teach is not anti-Western medicine. It's how do we all mix together? But so often these people, they go through the ringer, man, and then they have this very bad taste in their mouth about Western medicine. Western medicine might have preconceived notions about us, and it ends up still creating this battle. And I'm like, guys, that is not the best way to serve the person. The best version of all of this is going to be when we have this functional medicine side. We got the Western medicine docs on board. Everyone knows their place. Everyone's still getting their bills paid, right? No one wants to lose a customer. I get that. And we can all have an open conversation together to best serve the person. Like, we got to put our egos aside and stop trying to battle the other industry, because that's actually not best helping the person. So anything that takes us closer to that, seriously, I thank you, because it makes our jobs 1,000 times easier. And it's also validating for people like my mom, who got, the medical gaslighting that we talked about earlier for 7 years. She had the same set of symptoms. You know what they diagnosed her with at year 7? Graves' disease, because someone finally thought to test her thyroid antibodies. And it's
Oh my
like, these
God.
are not unheard of diseases or conditions. I can't even imagine someone that has a 1 in a million type of condition. So anything that we can do to make those conversations easier is great. I will do one more of Garrett's questions, just because I think this is going to be easy, because we kind of touched on this. So he said, from there, very excited for women to explore this. From there, how would perimenopause/menopause be worked with on a hormone level? Again, I kind of guess this kind of goes back to the conversation of, do they go right to a clinician, or do they get educated by you guys? But there's a few things that they could do once they got the information, right?
Yeah, correct. I mean, it's hormonal levels, right? So if you're going through this perimenopause journey, you're able to see what your hormones do on a day-to-day basis, understand how your symptoms correlate with that. I mean, there's just so much utility for it. I think we're filling a really big gap in the perimenopause menopause space when it comes to hormonal health. So, I mean, as clinicians, I think what we're doing is arming you with a ton of data. Let's work together to really make this as actionable as possible. Women need
Awesome.
it.
I have one signature question for you to finish
Okay.
up here. It can be your own stuff. It doesn't matter. It's just however you want to answer it. Our question is this: if you could be given a magic wand by us, and you could wave it, and you could get all of our viewers or listeners to do one thing for their health, so just general health, and that means you can get them to start doing one thing, or you can get them to stop doing one thing, I would wonder, what's the one thing that you'd get them to do?
Okay. I would ask them all to show themselves a little bit of grace, because I think we put ourselves on this pedestal that we should know certain things, and we're oftentimes not taught it, and are kind of punishing ourselves for not knowing it when we haven't been taught it, and you haven't taught yourself certain things. A great example is hormonal health and understanding why we're cycling and why we're not able to get pregnant. I would just really encourage everyone to take a moment, show themselves some grace, and not hold themselves accountable for not knowing certain things, because we're just not taught a lot of stuff that we should know.
That's why I love asking that question still after all these years, because we'll talk about something the whole time, and then I never know how that answer is going to go. So thank you very much. It's an
Yeah.
absolutely great point. Dr. Amy, everyone, you can find it at uva.life. And I'm absolutely going to set up a pro series right after we're done the live here. So if you are a graduate of ours, definitely look forward to that. And if you are a trainee, we'll just know you'll have access to it as soon as you graduate. Thank you so much for coming on today. And thank you for your work and what you've created. This is really interesting. And I will probably be a customer of this rather soon. Not personally, but my wife